Morning. Welcome to the panel about everything you wanted to know about starting and running a rural regional public defender office, but we're afraid to ask. We're going to start things off by allowing our panelists to introduce themselves. This is going to be a little bit different than what we've done so far. We're just going to have a conversation. I'm going to play Oprah, I guess, and Phil Donahue, even better. Phil Donahue, for those of you who may be a little younger, he used to be a talk show host who would just have really interesting conversations. This is before like people would beat each other up on stage during these kinds of things. So we're going to try to avoid that and play, do the Phil Donahue version. So first off, James McDermott, who are you?
I'm James McDermott. I'm the Chief Public Defender in Far West Texas. We started our program in 2017, so we've been out there for over 8 years now. We started with 5 counties, Culberson, Hudspeth, which are the 2 counties just east of El Paso, and also Brewster, Presidio, and Jeff Davis County, which is Big Bend country. We have recently expanded to include Terrell County and Valverde County, which is going down to Del Rio along the river. Geographically, we are about the size of West Virginia.
My name is Carly Cannell. I'm the Chief Public Defender for the Hill Country Regional Public Defender's Office. We cover 5 rural counties just north of San Antonio: Kerr, Bandera, Kendall, Medina, Gillespie, and Kendall, and we cover about 5,000 square miles and have a staff of 30, soon to be 35.
Is that working? Not yet.
Press the button.
Hold it down.
Should turn green.
It's blinking green and red. How about now? No?
Here you go, this one.
It was green. How about now? Whoa. That's what we're calling the business a hot mic. All right. I am Nathan Craddock. I'm the county auditor in Tom Green County out in San Angelo. I've been the auditor there for 20 years, and I was responsible for writing the grant, I guess, together with some assistance from our grant administrator there in the county. For the Concho Valley Public Defender's Office, and later for the expansion when we expanded into the big country and opened an office in Abilene. So instrumental in that. You probably wouldn't normally necessarily see your auditor involved in that aspect of it, but there were some unique circumstances. Probably talk a little bit about those as we get into the discussion. And so it's been a great experience and a wonderful project to be part of.
Covering 12 counties, correct?
11 counties
11
now.
counties.
Yes.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ben Zeller. I'm the Victoria County Judge. I've been in that role for 11, going on 12 years. One of the recent successes we've had in Victoria is one of the reasons I'm on the panel today is we did the ribbon cutting for our Crossroads Defenders, the 4-county Regional Public Defender's Office in Victoria. We had that ribbon cutting earlier this year, but it had actually been in the works, in the planning stages for years, frankly. Scott may not remember it, but it was in, I think, 2016 when he gave a presentation at a conference, and we first discussed that idea, but it has come to fruition, and look forward to talking about that with y'all this morning.
All right, so as you can see, we have different stakeholders here in terms of like different folks that are involved in starting a regional public defender office, running an office. Everybody is not here because, frankly, there's a lot of folks who are involved in this whole process. Importantly, district judges, county court at law judges, those folks also need to be involved in the process, and we'll get into that a bit. But we only had so much space up here. So those are important players, very important players, and we will talk about their roles here shortly. So in terms of the structure, I'm a very linear thinking person, and so I thought, the easiest way for me to talk about this was really just kind of start at the beginning of the whole process and then kind of work your way towards operations and then maybe talk about some big picture items. So I'm going to start off with the very beginning. Where's the clicker? I actually have some slides to kind of keep us on track here. So we did our introductions. So to be or not to be a county with a regional public defender office, I'm going to start with the gentleman down there on my right. Why did your counties want a regional public defender office in the first place? Judge Zeller.
Sure, thanks, Scott. We really started looking into this for the reason that many counties do. We were seeing our costs for indigent defense on the wheel go up and up and up to, in Victoria, well over $1 million a year. And at the same time, we were losing attorneys who were doing those types of cases. Several of them passed away, others retired, moved away. So costs were going up. The efficiency of our courts was declining due to absent attorneys, non-existent attorneys, and we were getting feedback from a few of our district judges that this was a problem. And so I had known about the concept of these sustainability grants, thanks to Scott, for a while. And so we started looking into it, but that was several years ago. We made one attempt at it. We didn't quite have our stakeholders on board. Then another attempt. Finally, on the third try, we were able to form our 4-county regional office, and it's been a big success. But really, those were the reasons: costs and limited availability of attorneys.
Nathan?
And that's exactly the same for us. Had those limited attorneys. Tom Green County is a large to medium-sized county, about 125,000 population. But surrounding us and the other counties in our public defender's office are very small counties, tiny counties really. And so they don't have attorneys that live in those counties there really. They were using the same attorneys that Tom Green County was using. And so we were also seeing a lot of scheduling conflicts together with a shortage of attorneys and some cost issues that we were looking at. And this had been something that had been a perennial topic that had been coming up for 15 years. I had looked into this 3 other times over the years. The district judges or commissioners court had asked me to, run some numbers, see what it looks like. And for one reason or the other, we never, there was always a reason, no, we're not going to do that at this time. But it finally came to the point to where really the catalyst for us was a new district judge who came on board, and she was the first one who said, we need this, you need to go make it happen, I want it right now. And so that's when I called you, Scott, and you said, well, our planning studies are booked for a while, and so you'll have to do it yourself. And so that's what we did. But it got to a point to where, in reviewing that and all those years, I always did sort of a break-even analysis, and it was more expensive to operate the public defender's office every time I looked at it, but it was approaching that break-even closer and closer every time, to the point to when we actually created the office, I feel like it could have gone either way, but the grant funding is what really tipped us into pursuing this.
James or Carly, I don't know if you have any insights into your counties that may differ in any way from those, but.
Similar reasons.
I can talk because the two ends of my district were a little different. Up in the 5 counties that we started, we're down now outside of my office to 2 attorneys on the wheel to handle conflicts, maybe 1 depending on whether it's a first or second degree felony. And so I think that the counties came to the public defender probably to the idea of it too late. Right now, when I talk to people and they say, well, we've got enough attorneys right now in a rural county, I look at them and say, well, you're not thinking about what's going to happen in 5 or 10 years because those lawyers are not going to be there. And the lawyers are not moving in to the region. This is the problem of the legal desert is real, and it is growing. And if you think you're okay now, you're not going to be okay in 10 years. And now is the time to make the plan. Valverde County is different. There were attorneys around. There's a very busy federal court there that eats up a lot of attorney time. And there are attorneys coming from around the region, but and I think a lot of this has to do with cost. Attorneys that are being paid on the wheel in order to cover their overhead, in order to cover their student loans, have to take a large amount of cases across a large number of courts. And so there are courts in Valverde County that are sitting in docket that starts at 9 o'clock, sitting in docket until 4 or 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon, waiting for the attorneys to show up. So there are attorneys on paper, and if you look at the state reporting, you might see a list of attorneys, but that means the courts are involved in an incredible waste of time. To us, when we were looking at expanding to Valverde County, that was, I think, the major enticement for them. And they needed some immediate relief. We got our grant there on October 1st to start staffing, and we took our first case on Wednesday this week, 20 days later, in order to try to provide immediate relief to the counties, to the county, in order to show that, in fact, this is what they needed, and we were able to solve their problems.
Follow-up question. What are some of the most important things folks should do before applying for a TIDC grant to establish a regional public defender office? Judge Zeller?
That's an extremely important question, and the answer, in our case, without a doubt, was stakeholder outreach, stakeholder engagement. This, for any county or counties that does this, is a big step, a big change of how you do things. We all know that inertia is one of the most significant obstacles you face in a county, in any bureaucracy. We've never done it that way before. So it took quite an effort to get folks on board. I mentioned us giving this 3 tries. The reason the first try failed is because we did not yet have full stakeholder support, or at least a critical mass of stakeholders. Our county is only a 4-county region, far smaller than some of the ones represented here. But even with 4 counties, that's 20 county commissioners, 4 county judges, multiple district judges. I don't need to tell y'all that a group of folks like that has big egos, big opinions, which often conflict, often differ. But even so, it's vital to get that group together. The reason we didn't succeed the first time was because we had some new office holders in that stakeholder group who weren't yet ready to take as big a step as this. So it was an effort to get everybody on board. So I would say that's an absolute key. Start those conversations early. Most everybody in that stakeholder group will be aware of the challenges, if not the cost challenges, then at least the lack of attorneys, the bottlenecks that can occur. But that's absolutely essential. Stakeholder engagement, participation, involvement. Additionally, the research and the planning. I was surprised in the process that Scott was still returning my calls. He did multiple different planning studies for us with different counties, different scenarios. It is a very in-depth planning process, and should be, because this for us was a multi-million-dollar decision. Frankly, it's one of the county's larger departments, about 27, 28 folks in total. So it was a big step, and I'll say too that the research and planning is necessary too, because I know in Victoria County, when something goes right, everybody takes their share of the credit appropriately, but when something goes wrong, everybody points to the county judge. So I wanted to make sure we were doing this correctly. We're putting the right data, the right salary estimates, the right projections into these planning studies so that this was a success. So to answer that question, stakeholder engagement, participation, involvement, absolutely vital. And I'd also say that that stakeholder group is the community. In the last presentation, there was talk about telling the story. You can tell that story during the process about the need for this. Even, I would say, most voters probably aren't well versed on what a public defender's office is. But telling the story about how it's a constitutional right that's passed down from the feds to the state to, in Texas, the counties, and it's our job to both fund it and to figure out how it's done, and there's probably a better way to do it. Telling that story so that when it's time to pull the trigger on it and spend the money and take the plunge, you have not only the stakeholders in the courthouse, but the community backing you up.
I agree with the stakeholders. I think it's also important, what was important for us was that commitment that I talked about. When you finally decide, we've looked at the information and you need someone to make a commitment and to actually go forward with this. It's not something we're just gonna dabble in. We're not just gonna go see a what if. We're gonna do this. And when Judge Dusick said to me, this needs to happen right now, it was, yes ma'am, it will be done. And so that was the first time we had that. So that was a big impetus for it. The other thing I think that you need at your counties, we're talking about if you're looking at creating an office, this is before you have a chief or any kind of infrastructure like that. You're talking about whether or not to write a grant and apply for this and create the office. You need a champion at your county who's going to lead the way with this and who's going to be responsible for pushing this thing through. That's going to be a different person at every county, probably. It's not necessarily, I didn't know it was going to be me. It ended up being me in Tom Green County. So, but it'll be someone different at your county, probably. But you need that person who can see it through, who people trust with the decision making and where this thing is going. You can't really do that by committee, I've found over the years. That doesn't really work. You do need stakeholder, that's critical. But as far as actually pushing this thing forward, you've got to have that one person who's really going to push it forward, I think.
Nathan, I wanted you to talk a little bit about the private bar, because there are times at which we get into this process with a county, and we're actually going through it right now with a county that shall not be named, but we are hearing about private bar pushback because money is involved here, right? And the private bar is a stakeholder, a vested stakeholder in the indigent defense system. And so I thought the process was interesting with Tom Green in terms of how the private bar shook out in terms of their position on the office.
And when I mentioned earlier that we had looked at this several times over the years, the bar was often the reason that was brought up as the reason we're not going to move forward at this time. We had a very vocal, prominent member of the bar show up years ago to Commissioner's Court when we were talking about a public defender's office, and gave a rather impassioned speech against not creating another government bureaucracy. And this was the last thing we needed. We were going to be taking money out of the pockets of the local bar who were appointed counsel. And so that was often cited as the reason that we were not going to move forward, as the resistance element of this. Wasn't the only reason, but it was often cited as a big reason. When we finally got to the point where we decided we're going to move forward with this and we're going to apply for the grant and we need to start putting together an oversight board for the public defender's office, was like, now that person who gave that impassioned speech against it, he's the chair of our board. And he does great, and he's done a complete 180, and Elizabeth can attest to this. He's wonderful at it. He really came around and saw the value and realized that the bar can't handle this caseload anymore. We don't have enough attorneys accepting these appointments, and it's really overworking the ones that are still willing to be on the wheel. And so he's really come full circle on that, and now is one of the greatest advocates that we have. Elizabeth, did I miss anything on that? Okay.
Yeah, we made I would say, an interesting compromise in Tom Green in terms of getting private bar support. What it came down to was the private bar said, yes, we cannot handle the level of cases, particularly the number of felonies in Tom Green. And so what if the public defender office takes 50% of the felonies and the other 50% stays with the private bar? And when it comes to the surrounding, much smaller counties, go at it, public defender's office. You can do as many of those, take everything except for conflicts, because that's a big drain on us in terms of resources from the private bar's perspective, getting out to those smaller counties. And so that was the compromise that was made there, and it seems like everybody's generally happy with it. Anything the chief defenders want to add real quick in terms of what to do before applying for a grant?
What?
It's ready.
Thank you. What Mr. Craddock was talking about, the getting a one person in Val Verde County, that one person who really drove the issue was the county attorney. The chief misdemeanor prosecutor in the county was the one who looked around and said, we're the ones who are dealing with the fallout of attorneys not being around and attorneys not showing up. And I can tell you that going to Commissioner's Court was easy when their attorney was the one telling them that they needed to do it. And in fact, I think you heard yesterday from Scott, there was some funding issues that we went through in order to get here that involved going to the legislature and getting a special rider to bring additional money to TIDC to help fund the Del Rio expansion. And the county attorney went with me to the legislature, and we testified together in front of the House and the Senate in order to do that. And I think that was, in that particular circumstance, that was key to what made that happen.
Yeah, totally agree. That was an amazing sight that I had never seen at the legislature, where, yeah, chief defender joined with the county attorney to urge the legislature to fund the expansion of their office. Let's see. Next thing I don't know how much I want to cover here, because this is kind of getting in the weeds, and there's a whole grant process. Wanted to just kind of touch on what are some of the key things that people need to know about the grant application process on the front end. I'll just go ahead and say, like, in Texas, we're probably unique among states in that if you want a public defender office for a region, for a single county, whatever, as part of the grant application process, you have to have the county submit and approve that grant application to us, but you also need any judges that are going to be using the office. They also have to basically sign a resolution and submit that to us, saying that, yes, we will use the public defender office, and that's part of the application to show that there is support locally, and it's, the county judge and the commissioners, they can't just do it on their own. The judges can't just do it on their own. It's got to be effectively a joint application process, which I think speaks to the importance of that early work amongst all the stakeholders to build that support, because you don't want to submit an application and then on the back end, oh, no, we didn't really want to do that. Once again, we're dealing with that right now in a particular county, and it seems like some of that front end work was not done to the need that it was. And so that's part of the application process. Anything else that y'all feel like is important to mention in terms of the grant application process?
I would just mention that, you need all of the, I guess you need resolutions from every commissioner's court.
That is
that's
correct.
going to join, and so
Since
that,
it's a regional, right?
yeah, that can be a bit challenging, whether you're creating a new office or whether you're looking at expanding your office. Sometimes there's some resistance or questions out there from those commissioners' court. It's not all an automatic, yes, we want in on this. So what's important there as part of that is to go out to those courts and meet them there in their own county. A lot of times what we found was it wasn't necessarily the commissioner's court that had reservations about it. There's often a gatekeeper at these counties, and you don't know who that is until you get out there and find it in person. So sometimes at one of our counties, it was the county attorney who was quietly whispering in their ears, well, you don't really want to do this, or do you really trust Tom Green County to handle this? In another county, it was the district clerk, and she really kind of controlled the information that flowed in and out of that county. And so it wasn't until we went there and answered questions in person and explained the resolutions and the grant process to them that we got buy-in from all of them. So go make those personal visits.
I just want to underscore how true that is, what Nathan pointed out, where there often is a gatekeeper, a stakeholder you really didn't even know about. That's why, another reason why our first stab at this never came to an application itself was because in the initial county group that we were looking at, there was a district clerk who did steer the ship largely with the decision making there, unbeknownst to us at that time. So that does happen, and that just takes the groundwork to figure that out. And it does, in fact, like Nathan said, really require a point person, someone steering the ship, taking charge, leading the effort, and it is a different person in every situation. But this needs to be somebody's job, somebody's baby, falls on them to make sure this is done. I know in Victoria we have the good fortune of having a grant writing department that when it came to that step, they were aware of deadlines, needs, and helped get it done, but this needs to be somebody's job to get it done, and it has to be a priority. Something of this scale and this importance needs to be a priority. And I think that's one of the keys to our success, which I think we may talk about here in a bit.
Yeah, I guess another thing I'd mention that's already been talked about a bit is our planning study process at TIDC. These are done for free. Basically, we just need a letter or request from an elected official in one of the counties. I'd say preferably, the county that's looking to be the hub county that oversees the grant. And, once that submission is done, we have an application process. We ask you things like, okay, like what types of cases do you want this office to cover? What percentage of the cases do you want covered? What counties are going to be involved? We basically take all these different variables, plug them into our beautiful Excel spreadsheet that Kristen Meeks developed, and we come up with an answer for you in terms of what the office looks like, how many staff are there, what's it going to cost, how much grant funding can we provide. And, from that, that can really drive, you don't have to you say, yes, we're going to, definitively do that, but, that makes the whole process a lot smoother when we have a grant review committee, and so they will, look to see like, oh, well, they've already been working with TIDC. TIDC did this planning study. We see that, their caseloads and staffing is based on following TIDC caseload guidelines, which is a requirement if you want a regional public defender office funded by TIDC. You're going to have to follow our caseload guidelines. And so all of that goes into the application process and really makes the process smoother. Anything else on grants? Let's move to the startup phase. And so after you get the grant, there is this netherworld that you enter, in which you've got our approval, you've got this pot of money you can work with. And in the first year, you're going to get 80% of your costs covered. And then following years after that, if you have a rural regional, you'll get 2/3 of the cost of the office covered, as long as we have money and we, make our budget based on, how much we've already committed to your offices. So, but there's this point where there is no office. There is, potential, and you've got to move this thing forward. So, what advice do y'all have for counties during this startup phase? What do they need to focus on to ensure long-term success? Judge Zeller.
That is a very unique and frankly challenging phase. I would say at that point, when there's not yet an office or staff, the key, and I think the key to our success in Victoria was bringing on board the right chief public defender. And I'm glad to see our chief public defender here in the front row, Brian Watson. Our goal, once the grant was approved, was to get the right chief in place, to steer the ship, hire, build the operation, which we interviewed a lot of candidates. And frankly, one of the fears in my mind while this was going on was not finding the right person. We didn't know what the applicant pool would be. I know in my mind it was a goal, somebody who would lead the oversight board through the process, someone who would charge forward and that not fall on me, because I've been involved in this just trying to get it set up, but I'm not an attorney. I've never done this, don't want to do this. Brian Watson, among the many interviews we did, was the clear choice to lead the office, and that's really been one of the main keys. I know in my mind, I thought we wanted to prioritize a candidate who really valued being able to start this entity from the ground up. So one of our most important decisions was bringing Brian on board to lead the office. I know one of his most important initial decisions was bringing on a good office manager, Annalisa, who, like I say, is the office manager there, and we have one of our attorneys here also. But the staff is key. The staff is key. And so that's one of the primary things. But even once that's done, and you figuratively, as a board, pass the baton to the chief, it still needs to be a priority for the county, for the oversight board. That's not the time to wash your hands, walk away. That's his job now. It still needs to remain a budget priority and a practical priority for the county. I know in our case, again, this is one of the largest county departments that we have. And as much as we had, and I had attempted it, I had a lot, I guess, personally at stake in making sure this was a success. So hiring the right chief and then it remaining a priority, not something you then just put away in a box. You've got the grant. No, this should be something front and center, because it is a wonderful story to tell. It's a wonderful story to tell about how to improve county government, local government, and also a better way of ensuring people's constitutional rights. So the right folks leading the operation and then it remaining a priority.
I also think that that's the time to push some boundaries. And I've been known to start a little trouble in my day, but sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes you have to drag the county along, whether they want to go along or not. Counties, of course, known for our high rates of salaries and compensation across the state, not really, no. So this is one of the areas where we spent some time and had a conversation early on about when we're creating positions and even in the first few meetings with the oversight board where they're putting together the job description and they're searching for a chief, about that structure. And I'll tell you, what we put into place at the beginning still causes problems to this day, because I'm a firm believer that you get what you pay for. And so we put a salary behind it, the chief position and other positions, that I felt was more commensurate at the time. And at the time, it was more money than we were paying our district attorney's office and our district attorneys were making. And I was okay with that, because that was an area where I felt my commissioner's court had not addressed appropriately. And I knew it would cause issues. Those issues needed to happen. Those problems needed to happen. It needed to come to the light. And so we continue to work on that today, to this day. But it was a perfect time to be sort of a catalyst for change. This office will be an agent of change on many different levels for your county. So you can have a hand in guiding some of that and some of the things that you think need to happen to bring it along and ensure the success of the office. Because so much of it did depend on bringing the right people on board and getting those people there. And so it was necessary to put that kind of effort and planning into it to get them there.
One of my follow-up questions, I'm going to turn this over to the chiefs here, talking about the oversight board and what do they do and how they can help ensure your office is successful. Public defender oversight board is a required element of a public defender office if you want a TIDC grant. And so why don't y'all talk a bit about who's on your oversight board and how they can help ensure that y'all are successful.
Our oversight board is made up of the 5 county judges, and they're all permanent members of our oversight board, and then 6 other members. Each county has 1 additional member except for the fiscal agent. They have 2 additional members. And so it's an 11-member oversight board, and we meet with them quarterly. What I found is really important about the oversight board is we're a rural public defender's office in a really conservative part of Texas. And so while, we've talked a lot in this conference about holistic defense and all of these things that I think are really important and we all believe in, my board does not care about that at all. They are there because they care about how the public defender's office is saving them money as opposed to having just a wheel. And so I have to know my audience when I'm presenting whatever data I'm giving them or whatever information I'm giving them, or if I'm asking them for additional positions. I was able to convince them to give us a mental health department that was funded by TIDC by grant starting October 1st. But I had to present it to them in a way that was not, oh, we need to do this because this is horrible for humanity, that these people with mental illness are sitting in jail or are, waiting a year for a bed at the state hospital. I had to say, look how much it's costing for the jail to treat these people with mental illness. And so when I approach our oversight board, and I have great relationships with them, they're people I really respect, but they are looking at this from a different perspective than I am. They believe in the public defender's office because it saves the county's money, not because of humanity. Most of our office believes in the public defender's office because of humanity, and we care that this person is suffering when we're trying to help them. But I have to speak to my audience when I do that, and so knowing your oversight board is critical, and being able to talk to them in a way that they'll listen and hear you is very important.
Scott, if I can address both questions just briefly. And first, I think that when I've talked, I tend to say we instead of I a lot, and that's partly because from the beginning of my program, my first assistant, Paul Chambers, who's here, has been sort of not really my first assistant, but my partner in getting all this done. This is getting a program started and running and functional and successful is an incredibly lonely and difficult and hard job, and having people with you that can get that done. And so I just want to thank Paul for all the work that he's done for that. On the issue of the startup, I think there's only one issue to pay attention to, and everything else flows around it, and that is taking cases. There's no point in a public defender's office if it's not taking cases. And it just, there's no reason to exist. There's no reason for TIDC to spend the money on it. There's no reason for the counties to spend money on it. When I started in Alpine, we got our grant in that October 1st of 2017, and we started taking a full caseload on December 15th after 75 days. As I said earlier, Paul, well, I didn't say this, Paul, who's been my first assistant from the beginning, has moved down to Del Rio, and he started taking cases this week after 20 days. We don't have an office down there. We don't have a physical office. We've got people working from home. We've got Zoom meetings. We've got people borrowing rooms in courthouses to have meetings. There's a private attorney in Del Rio who has let us use his conference room on occasion. I think yesterday we filed our first writ of habeas corpus for a bond reduction on that first case. We're there to try and show immediate value, immediate financial relief to the counties. Not only did we take that case, but we have also taken on Paul will be second chair on a trial that was an appointed case to the private bar, so that the county is not also paying for a private attorney to be second chair on that case, and that case is going to trial in 2 weeks. That I think is everything else flows around it. Office space, staffing, supplies, furniture, everything revolves around taking cases. With the oversight board, this has been a tricky question for me because I know that there are some differing opinions on what an oversight board should look like. I do also have county judges on mine. I know that Mr. Craddock was a little surprised when I mentioned to him yesterday that I've got county judges on my oversight board. We've been through some tricky financial moments in the history of my office where we needed to do some of those salary adjustments. We needed to do some of the staffing adjustments based on actual numbers as opposed to what was projected when the planning study was done in 2016. And it turns out I needed county judges to be able to go to Commissioner's Court, having gone through the process of really crunching those numbers and the staffing and the caseloads with me. So by the time that I was needing to go and actually make the arguments to these, as everybody knows, Commissioners' Courts are difficult to get things through when it involves money and spending more money. And I needed the county judges to be on board with me before we went in there. And part of that was having them being as part of the decision-making process about our budget. That really bore fruit when I had to come up to Austin to advocate in front of the TIDC board about some issues with our budget last year. And 4 of those 5 county judges came with me, where 2 years ago they were resistant and argumentative and did not want to understand what we were up to, came to Austin to be an advocate for us. And is there a right decision about having a county judge on your board or not? I don't know the right answer for that. For me, it was the right answer.
Yeah, this is a little tricky, and if you look at our guidance for starting a oversight board, we actually follow the ABA 10 principles of a public defense system, which calls for no sitting judges who are, going to be hearing cases that the public defender office appears before. They should not be on the oversight board, is what our recommendation is. However, after doing this for a while, because particularly in a rural context, you have county judges who are the chief executive of the county who are also serving as a sitting judge. And so they've got this dual role that I don't think the ABA 10 principles really considers. I would still say, generally, I would not recommend a district judge, being on there because, they're not in that same position. The district judges, all judges really, I think should feel welcome to come in to a board meeting and comment on, what their perception is of how the office is doing. So when it comes to the county judges, I'm frankly of a mixed mind at this point because I've seen oversight boards without county judges on it, and maybe the counties put commissioners on it. And I think if you talk to a lot of county judges, they'll tell you many commissioners don't really have, the knowledge that the county judge does or the involvement in terms of getting that office set up. And they don't have the gravitas that the county judge does when it comes to coming back to the commissioner's court And you do want, this, consensus or buy-in from all the counties in order to make this work. So I'll just leave it on that. We've got a lot to cover, and I want to make sure that we get to all of y'all's key points here. We've got 10 minutes, and I've got 6 more sections to cover, so that ain't going to happen.
I can fill it up for you if you want.
So the next couple of questions were about the chief defender and what makes a successful chief, advice for new chiefs, and the importance of location in your office. Which of those would you like to talk about real quick? Either one of you.
I can talk. I can talk on what I think makes a successful chief. I mean, I'm not tooting my own horn, but I do feel like we have a successful office, and I have a really good retention rate with attorneys. Like, we rarely lose attorneys now. And the way that I've chosen to lead the office is by doing what I ask my staff to do. I maintain a caseload, a small caseload, but I do maintain a caseload. I'm very present. My door is always open. I have quarterly meetings with my staff one-on-one where they all come in and talk to me, and they can tell me anything, whatever they want, negative things, positive things, criticisms of other attorneys in the office, or problems that they think they see. So I make myself very available. We also have monthly meetings with the entire office. We have 3 different offices amongst the 5 counties, and so everyone doesn't get to see everyone as much as we would like. I believe in a collaborative effort. Nobody goes to court by themselves. Nobody goes to trial by themselves. And so I think these monthly meetings are extremely important because it gives everybody the opportunity to get to see each other and know each other. We bring in speakers to those meetings. We do ridiculous team building games sometimes, whatever it takes in order to kind of bond the office together. And so I have 2 deputies and myself, and we make sure that we are always present somewhere where everyone can find us if anyone needs anything or any help. I do not micromanage my staff. They know what their expectations are. I keep the caseload where it's supposed to be. If they have a problem, they know they can come to me and discuss their caseload, but they know what their job is, and unless I find out otherwise or hear anything else, then I expect them to be doing it, and I don't have to worry because I've had this, same staff, they do a great job. If I hear of a problem, then I address it. I'm not going to be all in their business. I'm not telling them how to handle their cases. I think when new chiefs are starting up, in order to gain the respect of the staff, they need to show the staff that they will try a case, they will prepare a case, they're not too good for a misdemeanor, they'll do whatever it takes and step in and handle things.
I fail at being a chief at least once a day, and that's not an exaggeration. Often it involves my staff or Paul telling me how I failed and helping me make sure that we're doing better. And that's just the starting point for me. I believe that TIDC has been working on a chief's manual that should be published sometime, hopefully soon.
Yes.
That's been something that I've been agitating for since I think the second day that I was on this job. There's a lot of little details of things that have to be done in particular ways to comply with TIDC, and timelines for grants and for reporting and for getting to Commissioner's Court, and what open records laws are and what Open Meetings Act, whether it applies to you or not. And so for me, the biggest challenge at the beginning was just every day was, what did I do wrong yesterday? Anytime Scott or Bill or Edwin calls me, it's, what did I do wrong? And just help me fix it. Everything that Carly said, I agree with. It looks different in every context, but I think that the chief, I also believe the chief needs to work on cases and needs to also be seen from writ hearings, bond hearings, all the way up through felony trials. I know that Alex Bunnan, even running Harris County, has always kept a small caseload for that exact reason. And Alex has clearly been a model for me, and he has been a hero in the field. So if he does it, it's good for me too.
Location was one thing. You two, just real quick, tell them about your awesome offices and why you felt like it was important for your office to be nice.
Sure. Well, this goes back to this being a priority. A successful public defender's office starting out doesn't become successful by accident or by default or by chance. It happens because it's a priority and you have the right people at the helm. In Victoria, outside the grant, we spent about $1.3 million and bought an established law office downtown, a historic building with lots of mahogany and roomy offices and windows with a good view, to underscore the fact that this is a priority, but also for recruitment, retention. I wouldn't suspect a young person comes out of law school and wants to sit in a dark cubicle in some, storage warehouse. It matters. It matters where the office is. So it's a priority for us. We bought a nice building and it's working great. On the attributes of a good chief, real quickly on that, it's two hats you're asking for in the same person, a good attorney, but also a good leader, a good manager. We, like I say, fortunately found that in our chief. But really, it's a startup venture when you're forming a new office, starting from the ground up, policies, procedures, recruiting, all those things. So you need a good manager, a good leader, and a good attorney. It's two hats, and you really have to have them both.
And we created a space in our main administrative building that's across the street from the courthouse in San Angelo for our public defender's office. We gave them a lot of leeway working with the architect to design the space. I won't say it's as big as they need. They're probably already feeling a little crowded, but it was important that they had a space to make their own and that they felt where they could make clients comfortable. So I think we did okay in San Angelo. Abilene's been a little more of a challenge because they're renovating a courthouse and they promised us space once they vacate another space. And I think it's still going to happen. Anytime I see somebody from Taylor County, I give them hell about it. But we'll get there too. They'll have a nice space, a permanent home there eventually as well. So it's really important to have that home for them.
We got less than 5 minutes. I'm going to jump down to successes. Tell us real quick about one of your successes you're most proud of, James.
Well, I'd like to say Paul, because it's true. When we did this expansion to Del Rio, one of the things that made it possible is that I knew that we had somebody who could go down there and start it without me having to worry about mission or values or management skills or the ability to get the job done. And the fact that Paul came to work with me at the beginning and is still here and is willing to keep doing the work. I don't know why he's willing to keep doing the work. Maybe you can ask him that in the hallway. But our successes right now is the expansion Del Rio, that we are almost fully staffed for Del Rio now. We have, out of 12 positions, I think we have 2 still unfilled, and those are for entry-level lawyers, which should be filled right now because we're recruiting at the law schools. And so that's our success right now. Every day there's a success despite my failures, but that's the current one we've got right now.
I'll tell a little bit more of a personal success story for our office. Generally, we are 29 out of 30 attorneys staffed right now. We had one that we had hired that did not pass the bar, so unfortunately she left, but we will be staffed fully. I think December 4th, we've got a new attorney coming on. So that's a great success for us, and most of our attorneys have been in the office at least 2 years. But we like to hire young attorneys fresh out of law school and train them. And they all work on all the trials that we try, and we try a lot of trials. This summer alone, we had 3 not guilties, and this was a continuous sexual assault, and it had several different charges, and 3 of the charges were not guilty, and there was a mistrial on the continuous sexual assault. We had, there was a case that got a lot of press. We were even in the New York Times about it, about a baby that had been named Hope Medina that was found 20 years ago by the side of the road. Through DNA testing, they finally identified the mother of the child through like ancestry or something, and we ended up appointed on that capital murder case. We worked, and this is a team of 5 attorneys, including baby attorneys and senior level attorneys. We worked really, really hard on that case, and it ended up being a manslaughter conviction, and she is already parole eligible. And we also had a recent mistrial on a murder case. Our last, I think, what do you think, Eliza Wesson? Probably out of our last 6 trials, we've won every single one except for one of them. There was one that was like, there was no way we were going to win. The person wanted to go to trial, but our staff works extremely hard to be trial ready. We are getting amazing plea offers now because we are always ready for trial. We try lots and lots of cases. Our staff stays ready. They show up, they're dressed, and that to me is the biggest success of our office, is we have changed the course of justice in the Hill Country region because we are willing to try cases. And I'm very proud of my staff for that.
Gentlemen, real quick, success.
Sure. I love when I see the smiles on the faces with Elizabeth and her staff when they say, we got another not guilty verdict today. That's wonderful. But the main thing that I love about it is twofold: how quickly they become a trusted element of our county amongst the courts and everyone they deal with. That doesn't mean they're always happy with a public defender's office. I love to hear my sheriff's office grumble about them. And I tell the chief deputy, they're making you better at your job. But what I really love about it, I think is a great success, is it's accomplished everything we hoped it would do. And it needs to continue that. They don't need to stop. Don't stop. But for the elements the court was looking for, the financial elements, the lower jail population, all of those things were achieved. They're giving great representation, the preferred representation now, I think, in our county for defense. It's been a whole success, and it's not often you get to create something in county government, let alone create something brand new that makes it better and makes it more efficient. And this has done that, so it's been a wonderful thing for us.
Sure. I think in time, measure of success will be the financial performance, as there's more of a track record, the win-loss ratio, all of that. But for the moment, the success I see has been us overcoming what we knew would be the biggest challenge, staffing and recruitment. It's real satisfying to see our office be the choice of young folks right out of law school, as well as attorneys who have been at it for decades, as the place in Victoria, our office, to start a career or continue a career. That I see as a big measure of success. And that's one that we're seeing now. Again, we're a new office, but that's something that's already been a success. And frankly, and I guess it's more qualitative, I'm not getting any complaints about the office, not from the district judges, not from the county court judges, not from anyone. So that in and of itself is a huge success, because if there were a problem, I would certainly hear about it. So tip my hat to you guys, Brian, and the whole crew. And also, a thanks to you, Scott. As state agencies go, Texas Indigent Defense Commission is a small agency with a very small budget, and yet does such incredible, incredible work. And I thank you for your work getting our office off the ground, Scott, you and the whole team who have put in hundreds of hours holding our hand to get us to where we are. And I really do appreciate that. And our oversight board, our commissioners court, and I appreciate you and all the wonderful work that you do on behalf of our office and frankly the entire state. So thank you, Scott.
Well, on those kind words, I will thank all of you for showing up and doing the wonderful work every single day. Y'all are really the ones who are down in the trenches doing the work. I'm happy to support y'all in whatever way I can, and all of y'all. So with that, I wish we had some Q&A time. Please feel free to take these folks off to the side and ask them any questions you want, but we got to get on to the next panel. So thank you all. Next up, we're going to talk about addressing the attorney shortage crisis.